Optimal performance requires both excellent mental and physical performance, but sometimes we forget the mental side of physical recovery. This is Neil Wadier with the AMPT Mental Performance Podcast, talking today to physical therapist Scott Sassaman, actually my physical therapist. Scott, it's good to have you on the AMPT Mental Performance Podcast. How are you doing?
Good, good. Thank you for having me on and excited to chat about a few things here today. Should be fun.
Yeah, and this isn't the first time we've done this. We've hosted a webinar before, and for those of you that follow me, if you go back to my YouTube channel, I think the webinar is still there. We basically had the same conversation of the mental side of physical recovery and the importance of being mentally bought into your physical therapy, but also sometimes we forget about how difficult it is. And this is one of the things that I'm going through is, just getting old and realizing, okay, I'm not as tough as I used to be. I gotta dial it back. And it's not that I want to limit myself. It's just, I have to be realistic. And so there's this mental side to the physical. So talk to me about, where do we go with that kind of conversation? What's the most important thing that you want people to take away? And then we can get into the details of the mental side of the physical recovery.
Yeah. I think I tell folks all the time, anytime there's an injury, a trauma, an insult to the system, even if it feels physical, there's always an emotional aspect to it, a mental aspect to it, and those things can be just as hard, if not harder, to overcome than the physical aspects. So it's definitely a lot of what we kind of focus on peripherally in physical therapy, is like Neil mentioned, we've got to have some buy-in to what we're doing. If we don't believe in it, the odds of it being as effective as it could it is definitely downgraded there. So we always try to, with our clients, try to get that buy-in from them. Make sure that they're comfortable with what we're doing, and how we're doing things and how we're progressing. So it's a lot of back and forth there, to make sure that somebody's comfortable. If they're not comfortable, again, they're not going to be in their best state to move forward or take that next step. And like you were mentioning there, you don't have to limit yourself necessarily, but sometimes it's about kind of adjusting the expectations, um, whether it's for a short period of time with a specific injury, or we've got to adjust those expectations as we do get older. Not that we have to stop doing the things that we enjoy, but we just might have to adjust those expectations as we move through the different stages of life.
Yeah, and there's a couple of things that you said that I want to really dive into. So when I'm working with mental performance clients, and this is sometimes just general resilience, but when you talk about mental performance, you really can't get into especially competitive athletics where you're competing against other people. Emotional regulation is extremely important, and so we talk about this idea that the events that you face don't cause your emotions and your physical reactions, right? Driving in traffic doesn't make you frustrated. Working with a bull rider, the bull doesn't make you fearful, right? It's the thoughts and beliefs that you have about that experience that drive your emotions and your physical reactions. And you mentioned that you talked about having those emotions and those physical reactions. And one thing that's really important is every emotion you experience has an equivalent physical response, right? So if you feel nervous, you probably have increased heart rate, muscle tension, you might high blood pressure, right? All these things. And
Yeah,
if
yeah.
you feel sad, your posture changes. Like every emotion has a physical response. You may not notice it because it might be insignificant or it may be really minute, but
Hmm.
that's really, really important when it comes to not only whether you're talking about somebody who has experienced an injury, and I like the way you talked about it, an insult to the system. I thought that was a really cool way to
Hmm.
say it, right? Because it doesn't always have to be trauma. It doesn't always have to be
Yeah,
this
yeah.
horrible thing. It could just be a hiccup. It could be something out of the ordinary that just happened. I'm getting old and I yawn and I pull a rib or something,
Yeah, yeah.
it could just be something out of the ordinary. Something isn't right. And so now I need to change my habits, whether it's long term or maybe for just a couple of days to just recover from this. You hear about, football players with turf toe, and you're like, wow, that can't be that big of a deal. No, like it's actually a pretty big deal, and you got to take care of it.
Yeah.
If you don't, it's not going to recover appropriately. And so I thought those were really cool. That was a really cool way to put it. And so an insult to the system, and then having the right mentality. Another thing that I say to my clients a lot is trust the process. And it's
Hmm.
easier said than done, right? Don't confuse simple with easy.
100%.
The idea that if you trust the process and you go through the process, you're going to see results. And
Hmm.
expectation management is important. Like, how long are we talking here? Are we talking 2 days? Are we talking 2 months? Are we talking 2 years? Well,
Hmm.
regardless of what it is, a professional like yourself is going to be able to provide that. And you want to help us get back to normal as soon as possible, whether that be our old
Definitely.
normal or our new normal. But trusting the process as a patient, as a client, is extremely important. So how do you deal with getting people to buy into to trust the process?
Yeah, that's a very good question. So a number of different things that we do to help build that relationship, and get the buy-in. Certainly, like you mentioned, timelines are important to a lot of people. Whether it's because they have a sporting event coming up, a fun trip, a wedding, all those different things, um, are important for them to know, will I be able to walk my daughter down the aisle, or will I still be in a wheelchair or limping or whatever it is, so that they can then start, processing that on that mental side of it. Um, Early on, we definitely want to demonstrate to clients that, obviously, that we know what we're doing. So if somebody comes in and their shoulder's a 10 out of 10, and within that one session, I can get it to, even a 5 out of 10, they're going to have a lot more trust in me that I know what I'm doing, how I'm doing things. So that's a big part of it. Typically symptom relief. If they could only raise their arm to shoulder height, and then, they get it all the way over their head. That's another huge win that kind of demonstrates that the competencies. Um, Definitely early on too, we want to find the small wins. We're not going to get full range of motion on the first day. But if we can slowly chip away at that, and continually see those changes and improvements, again, that just continually builds the confidence that clients have, in ourselves. Certainly educating you all on, what's going on, to the best of our ability, outlining the process, like you mentioned. So by week 4, we want to have this much range of motion. By week 8, we want to be this strong. Those kinds of markers, that I think also give them, we've got the full, plan of care, which can sometimes be daunting. So then breaking out into those smaller chunks, so that they can focus on that next hurdle instead of, focusing on the full race. So those are some of the things that we do to help build those relationships, and dial that in so that, there's a more fluid back and forth, greater trust, those kinds of things. So that's kind of how we go about things on that end.
Yeah, I don't want to get more into. I definitely got more questions about that, but I want to take an opportunity to step back a little bit. And I don't like jumping straight into the introduction because it's kind of a boring way to do. Like, let's get into the content, and then so now we're to that point where we got a little bit of the content, we got the hook, we've got people interested. So let's talk a little bit about you. What's it like being a physical therapist? How'd you get into it? Why? What was your path? Because I know you do have kind of an interesting, some interesting experience that I wanted you to share. So what was it like getting into physical therapy?
Yeah, so I had some relatively minor injuries growing up playing sports, and that's how I was first introduced to the profession. And it seemed like a really cool, fun job that, where I went, they all seemed to be having a good time, um, which you don't always see when you see people at work, which is pretty cool. And then just continuing to play sports and having those different injuries, um, taking some classes in high school, learning a little bit more about the body, finding it fascinating. Um, so going into undergrad, I was kind of unsure, so on the fence about a few things, and then finally decided to take the leap that would take me down this path. Getting my degree in physiology at U of A, um, and then working in a clinic, actually getting more experience, getting even a better idea of what the profession involved. Um, I guess backtracking just a little bit, I was an athletic training tech during part of my time at U of A. So working with some of the sports teams there, helping the athletic trainers. So again, just another kind of part along this journey that I've taken to get to where I'm at now. I was fortunate enough. My physical therapy school, um, the president and vice president were both in the Navy, so some big ties to the military there. And I was fortunate enough to have a very long rotation, clinical rotation, working under another physical therapist at the Naval Hospital in San Diego. And a big chunk of my time there was with it's called the C5 unit, um, which stands for Comprehensive Combat and Complex Casualty Care,
That's a lot.
which was yeah, yeah. Had to write it down because it's I always get it mixed up. But that was an absolutely amazing experience, working with a bunch of folks who had been through some major injuries, most of them in combat, losing limbs, gunshot wounds, and then again, certainly some training accidents as well that led to some more serious injuries than you typically see at your standard outpatient orthopedic clinic. And just amazing to see the level of injury, but the motivation, the resiliency to, want to walk again after losing a limb, and putting in the work, and going over those different hurdles throughout that process, was just amazing to see. And all of them were quite young too. So even more kudos to them, to be at such a young age and having gone through so much and still having that drive to put in the work and get back to you know amazing things. Um, Meeting folks the first time in a wheelchair, and I was there long enough that some of them I got to see them use their running legs. So just a fantastic experience there to see those changes. Um, and a lot of, again, resiliency, mental toughness, um, that goes into that for them. Um, so yeah, just an absolutely amazing experience that I'm very, very grateful for. Um, and then very fortunate again, my first job right out of school. I'm still at the same company, and work with some really great people that I know Neil can attest to because he's met a number of them. So
Yeah, it's a
yeah, I've
great
been there
organization. I love
almost
it.
10 years now.
Yeah.
So so
Yeah,
that's
it's
kind of my
great.
journey throughout physical therapy. So
Okay.
a
And then
great
where do you
great
see yourself
profession.
going
And
from here? Like, are you just kind of on the path, or do you have something in mind down the road? Like what does the future look like for you?
yeah, so I'm very happy with where I'm at. Great clinic, great community there. In the last year and a half, 2 years, I've been looking to get more involved with the first responder community. Um, so a little over a year ago, took a course through the NSCA, a tactical strength and conditioning course, and then earned that certification in January. So again, just another step to provide better care to those in those unique jobs. Lots of different movements, difficult movements, weird hours, those kinds of things in that first responder community. So just getting more information on how I can do a better job when I am working with that community, looking to grow that aspect, both in the clinic and hopefully building some things outside of the clinic as well, some reaching out and those kinds of things. To provide the best care, not only on the treatment side but also on the prevention side of things, for those folks, because they are very high level athletes, that just aren't in a traditional sport.
Well, and
So
it's
that's
not just a
kind of
trade.
the outlook.
Yeah, I
Hmm.
think when we were a long time ago, it was just considered another trade, right? You train to be a firefighter, you train to be an EMT, you train to be a paramedic. And I think over the last, yeah, I don't know how long it's been, but definitely in the last 10 years, there's been this shift. And I see a massive shift lately in some of the conversations that I'm having with people. And we're referring to them as tactical athletes because we have to.
Hmm.
They are not just a trade, right? You can't look at like, all respect to electricians and plumbers and HVAC and this stuff like that, but they are not the same as
Yeah,
firefighters,
yeah.
EMTs, and paramedics. It is not the same thing. EMTs, paramedics, firefighters are not a trade. That is
Hmm.
a very high pressure, high risk, a high reward profession that absolutely has to be treated like an athlete. And I appreciate that you bring that up, because that's the way that I look at that. When I work with the tactical community, I very much treat them like athletes. Why wouldn't I?
Hmm.
As a somebody, I imagine the bell goes off in the firehouse, or something pings in the ER of, hey, we've got a patient coming in. Sometimes you don't even know what you're heading for, right? And
Yeah.
so how do you possibly prepare yourself for the unknown? And that's something that I became very familiar with. That type of mentality training in CrossFit was, the whole idea was you're training for the unknown and the unknowable, right? To be as fit as you can, as well rounded as you can, so that you can physically, mentally handle whatever comes your way. And it was very beneficial to me, not only physically, but in my mindset as well. And so that makes me
Hmm.
really happy to hear you talk about like that. We talk about going back to that idea of our thoughts and our beliefs drive our emotions and our physical reactions. Just talk to me a little bit about your belief and how you handle that, the mind body connection, and how powerful it is. And how does a patient's attitude affect their treatment? How is their attitude, how can it be a help or a hindrance? You could take two people and they have a very similar circumstance, a similar injury or a setback, and you have them doing the same things. How does attitude affect one versus the other?
Yeah, very good question. And it's can have an enormous effect. Again, going back to what you just mentioned, the two folks that are more or less the same, minus their attitude. You know, there can be poor attitudes. There can be just fear-based beliefs, and all those different things are valid, and can be, again, both helpful and a hindrance. Um, and that's part of when I mentioned earlier, kind of setting those smaller hurdles, especially if there's some fear-based beliefs, of, if I do this, I will get hurt again. Then we have to get from point A to point B. So maybe we need to make some more stops in there so that those fear-based beliefs can be overcome, by demonstrating success at smaller, maybe smaller increments. That might be the best way to put it there. So that's one side of it, that we all have different fear-based beliefs, and again, none are wrong or right. They're just different based off of our previous experiences in our lives. Certainly, I would say in my opinion, we have a little more control over, say, a bad attitude versus our fear-based beliefs. But again, when somebody believes that what they're doing is going to be helpful, it, it goes a long way. Um, you'll work with people who have those bad attitudes, or and something that I would say typically is relatively easy to clear up, but they're not in it. They don't do their exercises at home, those kinds of things. It can make a smaller problem a much more tougher one to overcome, versus the person that has the right attitude, comes in ready to work, um, does their exercises at home, those kinds of things. They're typically leaps and bounds above the other folks. So always trying to encourage people, always communicating as best we can, within our practice, as far as, sometimes there are other things going on in their life that can, contribute to more negative attitudes. You had a fight with your girlfriend, you lost somebody that you care about. Again, all perfectly reasonable things to, have some emotions with that may trigger, a less than desirable attitude, as you're working on those um, physical injuries. Because, like you mentioned earlier, if you those emotional things come with a physical side to it. So all things that we work on and do our best to again, the better the relationship between the client and the therapist, um, you know, that can help overcome some of those issues.
Yeah, I'm a big believer in that too. That's something that I take into my practice is relationships matter. And something I learned from my one of my business coaches was people want to do business with people that they know, like, and trust. And so if
Mhm.
you break down those barriers and you build that relationship off of know, like, and trust, and
Yeah.
you become known by being the expert and being consistently available. You're liked by being, I've been able to kind of filter down my leadership and my mental performance approach to empathy and accountability. Something I learned in the military. And you would like, okay, empathy in the military? No, that's huge. The biggest leadership skills that I've been able to filter everything into. If you can apply empathy and accountability, liberal amounts of both at the same time, you're going to be able to connect with people really well. You're going to be able to understand where they're at, but then you're also going to be able to hold them accountable by just simply saying, okay, I understand, and that's difficult, but what are we going to do about it? Because there's always something you can do about it, right? Even in the worst situations, what are we going to do about it? Sometimes it's just, hey, just go to the gym and get some exercise, or go get some sleep, or maybe what not to do, like, hey, just don't get drunk tonight, right? Like,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
sometimes we're talking about some really serious things here where people are really dealing with some difficult things, and you as a physical therapist, and actually just about anybody that provides a service, you don't know what people are going through. And it doesn't mean,
Mhm.
it doesn't excuse bad behavior, it doesn't excuse people mistreating you. It just means that if somebody comes in with a bad attitude, don't dismiss them as, oh, they're just being a jerk. No, they might be having a really bad day, legitimately having a bad day, and you could be that person that simply provides your service with empathy, but still providing accountability of, hey, I realize that you're having a tough day, but let's get to work. Let's control what we can control, and let's do
Mhm.
some things, right? Because when you empower people, people start feeling better about themselves. And so I think that's really important, that the relationship building is very productive and very important for therapy of any kind, whether you're talking physical, mental, emotional therapy. Relationships matter, and people
Yeah.
want to feel better. Very few people that I know in my experience, very few people I know love feeling miserable. Right? We've
Yeah,
heard about
yeah.
those people. People talk about those people. I might have even known a couple of them, but most people I know don't want to be miserable. They want to be productive. They want to have purpose and passion. And so, how do we, as service providers, help push that. And you can't do it and I tell that people when it comes to the accountability part, I tell people all the time, I can't do this for you. As a therapist, I'm sure you have that same mentality. I can't do this for you. I can provide you all the guidance and direction, but the work, you have to do the work. And I need you to buy into and trust the process.
Yeah. Yeah. And something, going back to relationships, something that I really enjoy about physical therapy that I think we're fortunate compared to a lot of other health professions is we do spend a lot of time with you all. So, getting to know, what kind of work you do, what you enjoy recreationally, getting to know things about your family, all those types of things, again, help build those relationships, and therefore that confidence, and it may lead to the times where there is something going on in life, and sometimes they even open up to you about it, and that again just builds those bonds even more, that they have the trust to let you know in on certain things, when they are having a bad day, and helps us to be even more empathetic towards that situation, even just getting a glimpse into it. And I think that's a really cool thing about what we do as physical therapists. And I imagine with what you do, that you get to know people extremely well. Even outside of the box of mental performance. So I think that's a really key factor in what we do, to help build those relationships, and build that confidence.
Yeah, and
And
something I think is really important in here is when we're you and I provide a service, and I feel like working with you, I'm very confident in your abilities, and in my experience, I'm very confident in mine. And when we're working with, whether it's a physical recovery, it's a mental performance. And again, I don't do counseling. I'm not fixing broken emotions and hurts and healings. I'm helping people perform better through mental performance, right? So different thing. But even for those people who do go to counseling, I go twice a month. I'm going to talk to a counselor. It's something I've been very transparent about, even when I was in the military, and I was one of the squadron leaders in the Air Force. Every time mental health come up, I was very transparent that I go talk to a counselor frequently, and and often, because it helps, and I need it. So you have all these provider professions, and we want to build relationships because our goal, we do what we do because we want people to be better versions of themselves. As bumper sticker corny as that sounds, that's what we're trying to do. You from a physical perspective, me from a mental, a counselor from an emotional, a doctor from a holistic wellness perspective, is that idea that we want to help people, but the requirement, there still has to be this accountability of, I can't do this for you. And if we are going to build a relationship, I'm going to do my part, but you have to do your part. And so as caring as I can, right, as empathetic as I can, but holding people accountable. That's why I'm very also transparent in my work that I don't offer guarantees, and I don't do money back guarantees, because if I'm the best at what I do and you don't employ it, it's worthless. If you're the best at what you do, and you're like, hey, if you do this stuff consistently, in 6 months, you're going to be better. If in a year they haven't done it, they're not going to be any better. And so I think there's this push pull of support, but also accountability. And so the encouragement to those of you who might be listening, who are receiving physical therapy, mental performance, counseling, or whatever, any type of medical, mental, emotional care, is buy into the process. Trust the process, trust your providers, build relationships, be vulnerable. So like when you go talk to Scott at his physical therapy and he asked you questions, hey, how are you doing? You're asking that legitimately because you're trying to break down those barriers so that you can build a relationship, so that people can know, like, and trust you, vice versa. And then you can build this relationship based on trust, mutual respect, with the idea of, we have this outcome that we're trying to achieve. How are we going to get there? And it all comes down to relationships, so that we can trust each other and work together.
Yeah, I think that's a great way to kind of sum all that up. I think I've said this a number of times today, but if you don't believe in me or what I'm doing, then there's a lot that's left on the table there. So and then just like with everything, you have to put in the work for it. Otherwise, it's going to be a lot tougher road to get to where you want to be.
Yeah, and we haven't even scratched the surface on the emotional toll that injury and setbacks, and I mean we could talk for another hour on some of this, going really really in depth on the emotional toll. And this is something that I'm experiencing getting older. And just I was just talking to my wife about this, about being in a position where I never imagined that I was always going to be able to do what I've always done, right? Not only am I not going to be as capable, but in my 20s and my 30s I was not nice to myself. I beat myself up so bad, and I'm paying for it now, and I don't regret a minute of it. I don't regret any accident on my mountain bike, or any workout that I've ever done, or any collision in football, or any of this other stuff that I've ever done. I don't regret any of it. It's been amazing. I just have to be realistic, but that doesn't mean I have to accept that I can't do exciting things and fun things. Expectation management. What does it now look like? And I'm not a big fan of the term the new normal, right? That was a big thing that came out of COVID. But what is my life going to look like in my 50s? When I was in my 20s, people are like, "Oh yeah, wait till you're 30." And then I got my 30s and I was working out hard and everything was going great. And I'm like, "Oh, this is so awesome." I get my mid 30s and people are like, "Oh, wait till you get to your 40s. You're going to be a broken down old man." And I was in my 40s. I was 42 years old, deployed, doing CrossFit competitions in downtown Doha. It was amazing, right? And that's where I think the really important message here is that we not only want to support you physically, but you support physically. I support mentally. A counselor supports emotionally, supports healing and trauma, and all of us, and then the medical providers, everybody does all this great work where we're trying to help people get better. And the goal here is to really buy into the process and trust the process. But really what it comes down to, and I was just talking to one of my classes at Grand Canyon University the other day, you can create the greatest process. You can have the most amazing plan, but if you don't follow through, it means nothing. So really we were talking about discipline. What does discipline mean? And people have we have these words, and sometimes we have a hard time defining a word like resilience or empathy. What does it mean? Like, we have this idea, but when actually put it into words. And so I thought about this a lot, and I came down with a very simple decision, or a very simple, I just ruined it. I had a very simple explanation that discipline equals decision. And it really is that simple. You have to come in, you have to build the relationships, you have to create the plan, you have to have an outcome goal, and then work on it. And it really just comes down to, you have to make the decision. This is something that I want to achieve. I'm going to buy into the process. If I buy into the process, good things are going to happen. Discipline is a decision.
I think I agree with you 100% there. We tend to get sometimes, kind of caught up in things, and, should I do this? Should I do that? And at the end of the day, we gotta act on things, and like you said, make the decision to act and get up every day and put in the work. Yeah, I think that's a great way to put it there.
Nice. So what kind of parting thoughts would you have? Like, how would you condense, in a way similar to what I did, that, from your perspective, from your experience and your education, and, your thoughts on physical therapy and the mental and the emotional impact, and the physical recovery, everything that goes into this, what kind of encouragement or direction would you want people to go to walk away
Yeah.
with?
I think, certainly for one, having a good attitude is going to be huge. Um, like you mentioned, you certainly don't have to share everything, but some vulnerability is helpful. And like Neil mentioned, when we ask how you're doing, it's not just surface level. We want to know how you're doing in regards to the physical injury. I'm fearful of this. I'm hesitant about that. The better that those things are communicated to us, the better that we can then, provide a better service to you all. And do your homework. That's always a huge one. And ask questions, ask lots of questions. A lot of times that can help you all frame things better as you're going through them. Certainly the more information you have, um, the better decisions you can make for yourself, as far as what you're going to do, how you're going to do it, in those kinds of things. So ask questions, work hard, do your homework, and be open with us about things, because we do truly care about what's going on, how you're doing, and we want to help you get through it. Again, both on the physical as well as the mental side, because we put them into these little boxes, separate boxes, but at the end of the day, they're to some degree one and the same. So just share things with us, work hard, do your homework, and that leads to a lot of success in physical therapy. Yeah, that's kind of how I would sum that all up. The more information we have, the more we can collaborate and find what's going to work best for each individual.
Nice. Yeah, I love it. Find somebody you trust, find somebody you can buy into, and then just trust the process, follow through and do it, and the end result's going to be the end result. We talk about goals. A lot of times outcome is largely outside of your control. You can put in all the work and it still may not work out the way that you want it to. But really it comes down to, don't compartmentalize that mental, emotional, physical, spiritual. It's all very much related. Our mind-body connection is an amazing thing. And if you put your mind to it, with the right attitude, man, I don't know if it's because your mind is helping heal your body, or if it's just your mindset helps you, like you talked about, just allows you to go the extra steps that maybe you wouldn't if you had a bad attitude. I don't know, right? Mm-hmm. There's still so much about the mind and body we don't know, but we do know people who generally have optimism and gratitude and thankfulness, and they buy into the process and they follow through and they have discipline and they make the decision to show up every day when they need to show up. Those are the people that end up with even if they don't end up with the best the results that they hope for, they're still grateful for the results that they get. And so I think there's something to be said for buying into that process and having a good attitude. And I get it, getting old is rough, man. And there's some days that, I was in there recently and you saw me and I was not in a good mood. I wasn't feeling good. I was in pain. I was not at all excited to be at the physical therapy office, but I did every single rep I was told to do. And I didn't do it with a smile on my face. I'm not going to say I had a good attitude, but I at least did it, right? Everybody's going to have their day, but I showed up and I did it. And so, then maybe the next day I show up and maybe I'll be a little bit more thankful and a little bit more grateful and I'll have a smile on my face, but I'm still going to do every rep and I'm still going to do what I can do to get back to it. So I appreciate everything that you do. I just appreciate everybody at your shop is amazing. I love all the therapists. I love all the trainers. Everybody's just always so amazing. So I appreciate you. I appreciate your time.
Thank you.
And look forward to talking to you some more about physical therapy and the mental side of physical recovery. I really appreciate your time.
Yeah. Thank you very much for having me. I appreciate it.
Thank you for listening to AMPT Mental Performance Weekly Podcast, your source for optimal mental performance coaching. I have 2 tasks for you this week. First, choose one action from today's conversation to implement in your life. Second, share this podcast and community with someone who values their mental performance. I appreciate your direct message feedback and would appreciate your online review of the podcast. Your honest rating and review help me improve the show and helps others find our community. Visit Arizona Mental Performance Training on all the popular social media outlets and at ArizonaMPT.com.